Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome again. My name is Sean Brilliant. I'm with the Canadian Wildlife Federation. I manage the Marine Conservation Program. With me is Katheleen Martin, Executive Director of the Canadian Sea Turtle Network. And we're going to talk to you today about leatherback turtles and the Great Canadian Turtle Race. Thanks for joining us. Our presentation should be 15 to 20 minutes long, and after that we'll try and take some questions, and we'll try not to keep it too long and move things right along here. By the way, Mike James was going to join us today, but unfortunately got ill at the last minute, and so we commandeered Katheleen to come in and take his place and fill the spot of talking about leatherback turtles and being the sea turtle expert. So if you're expecting to see Mike James and you see something a bit different, that's why. Okay, let's get into it. This is our country here, Canada, our great country, second largest country in the world, and this is what we tend to think of when we look at our country. But in reality, our country looks more like this because we have a lot of ocean around our country as well. And it's this ocean and the marine environment that I'm most concerned with and I like talking to people about. So we have a lot of ocean in our country that we don't get to experience very much, but there is a tremendous amount of animals and life that live in this ocean, some of which we understand and some of which we don't. Not all of us have the opportunity to live near the ocean. By the way, that reminds me, I should introduce that Katheleen and I are currently in Halifax, Nova Scotia. We're on the campus of Dalhousie University in the Oceanography department, and we have the opportunity to be near oceans, and I realize some of you may not. These creatures are amazing. They can be large and small, some of which we know about, such as jellyfish. We have fish that can fly through the air as well as they can swim through the ocean. The dolphins and seabirds, we have this baffling diversity of seabirds that live around Canada as well as marine mammals. And fish, the sharks, many people know about because these are so interesting and amazing creatures. And the giant marine mammals that live on our coasts as well are something that most people know about. What we're going to talk to you about today, though, is this amazing creature. This is a leatherback turtle. This is the largest marine reptile in the world. And the most amazing thing, or one of the most amazing things about leatherback turtles for me when it comes to talking about marine conservation in Canada is that as little as 10 or 15 years ago, people didn't think leatherback turtles lived here in Canada. But in reality, they do. They come to our waters every year. And so this is what we're going to talk to you about today, and I'm going to let Katheleen introduce this amazing animal to you.
Hey there.
Who's that?
I wanted to say Happy World Turtle Day to everybody. Today
That's
is
right.
World Turtle Day. And so it's really exciting for me to be able to talk to you about leatherbacks today. So leatherbacks are one of the largest reptiles in the world. They are the largest sea turtle, and they're different from other sea turtles. They, instead of having the hard shell that you would expect out of most turtles that you traditionally see on turtles, leatherbacks have a shell that is made of bone covered with this kind of, covered with fat and oily tissue, and then a thin layer of skin on the top. And the skin is kind of leathery to the touch, which is where the leatherback gets its name. And it also has these really cool ridges that you can see running the length of its carapace. And carapace is the name of the top shell of a leatherback. And it has really, really long flippers. And it has also, I don't know if you can see on this picture very well, but in the top of its head, there's a little tiny pink spot that is the lightest skin on the leatherback turtle's body, and we think it's how leatherbacks sense where they are in the ocean, that light penetrates that area of their body and lets them know where they are in the ocean, although scientists aren't entirely sure yet that that's exactly what's happening. But leatherbacks have been around since the time of the dinosaurs for more than 150 million years, virtually unchanged. Their biology or their physiology has remained virtually the same for all of that time. They're extremely cool. They can dive up to 1,300 meters in depth, so that's over 1 kilometer deep, and they can stay underwater for about 90 minutes at a time. They don't often do that, but they have the capacity to do that.
Oops, here. Go ahead.
Oops. Sorry.
It's okay.
So when leatherbacks start their life, they're not in Canada when they're tiny turtles, when they're hatchling turtles. They hatch on nesting beaches. The Atlantic leatherbacks, which is what I'm talking to you about right now, the ones that we have off the coast of Nova Scotia and Atlantic Canada. Atlantic leatherbacks start their lives on beaches in South America, in the Caribbean, the west coast of Africa. And when they do, they hatch on these nesting beaches, and you may have seen this on TV before, and they scurry off to the sea. But when leatherbacks hatch, they weigh about as much as a chocolate bar, and they'll fit into your hand. But when we see them in Canada, they're much, much bigger. They, as you can see here, these are two grown adult men next to a leatherback. Leatherbacks their shells can grow to be about 2 meters long. That's a particularly long turtle. The largest turtle that we've measured off our research boat was 1.75 meters just in the shell length. And they routinely weigh over 1,000 pounds. They're very, very big animals. And they get to be that way entirely on a diet of jellyfish. So if you look at this picture, you can see there's almost like a red stripe that's coming along the top of the turtle's carapace, or its top shell there. That's a jellyfish tentacle streaming along the back of the leatherback. And what we see in Nova Scotia when we're on our field boat off the shores here in the ocean during the summertime is we see leatherbacks feeding on giant jellyfish. And our work has been able to show us that leatherbacks can eat up to 75% of their weight in jellyfish per day, which is an awful lot of jellyfish. One of the ways they do this is the inside of the mouth of a leatherback turtle. And I like to show you this. It's kind of a gruesome looking thing, scary looking, is leatherbacks have their entire throat, their esophageal tract, and down into their stomach they have spikes that line that whole area. Leatherbacks don't have teeth, turtles don't have teeth. So instead they open their mouth and they ingest the jellyfish and they shred them on the way down using these spikes. And I brought a piece of leatherback throat to show you. I'm going to hold it up for you. If you can see this well. This was taken from a leatherback that died, and friends of ours at the University of Prince Edward Island Veterinary College took the piece apart and so that we could show it to people like you. And you can see all these different spikes. So I'll let Sean tell you a little bit about, totally challenged when it comes to the webinar, apparently.
No worries. Thank you, Kathleen.
A little about why we wanted to see where they were going.
Yeah, so one of the things that we're often dealing with when we're talking about marine conservation is that this is what we tend to think of when we think of the ocean. This is what some people tend to think of when they think of the ocean. This is not the case, of course. The ocean is not flat or featureless or lifeless. We know that there is a lot more going on underneath than what we can see. It's a world that's completely different from what we're used to experiencing. So we try and find ways to teach people about the ocean, to understand the ocean and the wildlife that lives there. And one of the mechanisms we thought we could use is leatherback turtles, because these are such amazing creatures. So we came up with a project that we called the Great Canadian Turtle Race. Some of you I know are aware of this, and this is a program that we've been running for the last 8 months or so, I think, a race that we've been running. And the website is right there, turtlerace.ca. The race is coming to an end. We have a winner now, and I'm going to get Kathleen to talk about the race. But if you're interested in getting some more information on leatherback turtles or seeing what the outcome of this race was, I encourage you to go to this website and check it out, and there's further links from there. But this race took a fair amount of coordination and a fair amount of information gathering in order to do it. And I'm going to get Kathleen to talk about how we went about making leatherback turtles race.
So it's been almost a year since we started the Great Canadian Turtle Race. Right. Actually, the summer's coming around quickly. The first turtle we tagged was towards the end of June. So what we have to do is we were putting satellite packs on the back of leatherback turtles. And what the satellites allowed us to do was they allowed us to find out where the turtles went in the ocean. The information that we got from those transmitters, from the satellite transmitters, told us a bunch of different things. One of the things was where the turtles went in the ocean, how deep the turtles were diving, what the water temperature was around them, a whole bunch of really interesting things. But in order to put the satellite tag on the leatherback, we had to find them first. And that is a really tricky process. And we work with commercial fishermen who let us do that, or who help us to do that. We go out on fishing boats and we look in the ocean for what one of the fishermen has described as something that's not supposed to be there, which is a leatherback turtle's head usually, and just sometimes the top of the shell sticking out of the water. But it's hard to find. The ocean's a very, very big place. I did not grow up near the ocean, so when I moved to Nova Scotia, it was something that was really new for me. I grew up in northern Ontario, which is very far from the ocean, and then Illinois, which is also very far from the ocean. So I hadn't really understood what a big, big place it is, and how hard it can be to find things there, particularly endangered species. So we go out on the fishing boats. You can see one there. This is a boat that we use off of northern Cape Breton. And we catch the turtle in a giant butterfly net. And that's what's happening in this picture. And so we see the turtle, we come up around it, and we net the turtle. And then we bring the turtle around in the back of the boat, And we attach the satellite tag to its back, and you can see one of the fishermen we work with in Devon, our turtle technician there, getting ready. This is one of our race turtles. And then when we follow the turtle's movements, what we get is information that's collected by the satellite that will tell us, as I said, where the turtles go. This is a map of all 10 of the turtles that we satellite tagged as part of the Great Canadian Turtle Race. And there are a couple really neat things about it. First of all, what you see, and if you look up around Newfoundland and in the Gulf of St. Lawrence area and around northern Cape Breton there, you can see there's a whole really squiggly area of the map that's filled in with a lot of colors in a really close together. And one of the really important things about that sort of mash of spaghetti up there is that it's Canadian waters, and it shows how important Canadian waters are to leatherback turtles. If you look at that map carefully, you'll see most of the density of lines occurs in Atlantic Canada. Then as they leave Canadian waters, leatherbacks tend to kind of spread out a little bit. But when they're where we are, when they come up to Nova Scotia and Newfoundland and Prince Edward Island to feed on jellyfish, they're spending a lot of time where we are. They're really concentrated. And then they spread out a little bit, as you can see, and they also go in all kinds of different directions. I mean, they're all going south, but they're not all going in one down one corridor. They're moving along and using the real breadth of the ocean space there to them, which is also really interesting. We had one turtle that looked like it was going to go all the way over to West Africa, and then she swung around and started to come back towards the Caribbean.
And this map is probably around October, isn't it?
This is October,
so this is October after they've started leaving the Canadian waters.
Yeah, this is at the end of October 29th, this map. But I want to talk to you about one really important track. So what happens when you satellite tag leatherback turtles is you're not entirely in control of that transmitter. So you put the transmitter on, it's like putting a computer on the back of a turtle and sending it off on its way. So once it's gone, you can't really determine if the transmitter is going to work or what's going to happen to it, how long it's going to last. And so slowly those transmitters stopped working, either because the batteries failed, because they were knocked off of the turtle, because we had little plants, little organisms growing over the transmitters so that the contacts weren't working properly. But we had this one turtle, Red Rocket, who traveled all the way, as you can see, from the waters off Nova Scotia. She was the first turtle we satellite tagged. It was in June of last year. And she traveled all the way down to the country of Colombia, which is in South America. And she landed on a beach called Bobolito Beach. And we were so excited because the people at Bobolito Beach were able to find her for us after a lot of work and walking along the beach. And Colombia, as you may or may not know, they speak Spanish. They do speak some English, but Spanish is their first language. And so it was really exciting for us to be able to find, it's a little tiny community in a very remote area of that country. We were able to connect with the people in that community using help from sea turtle biologists throughout the United States, people that work in the Caribbean countries whose ability to speak Spanish is better than ours. And they translated for us. We found people who knew other people in different countries, that they were able to finally connect us with a small group in Colombia in this little community that has been working on sea turtles. And the community's only been studying sea turtles in a kind of really organized fashion for about 2 years. And so for them to have a Canadian turtle come down and nest on their beach was a really, really big deal. They're very excited. They said Red Rocket is famous in their communities now. And this is Red Rocket. The picture you're looking at now is when we found Red Rocket, when they found Red Rocket on their nesting beach, and they were taking off her satellite tag, which they've then since sent back to us. And these are the two people that were there when they found Red Rocket that night.
Yeah. So now I was just talking to Mike earlier in preparation for this presentation, which he can't make it to, but he was telling me that they found Red Rocket again just in the last day or two.
Yesterday.
And that makes 6 confirmed nestings, he said. 6 known times that this one female turtle has nested. All of these turtles that we've tagged, by the way, were females because we didn't know which ones would land on the nests. The males, of course, never crawl up on the beaches because they don't have any reason to. They're not nesting or anything else. So they stay in the ocean their whole life. But the females will crawl up on beaches to lay nests. So we only tagged 10 females last year. And this one, Red Rocket, who we happened to find, nested 6 times already. And I think that there's probably 70 to 100 eggs in each clutch. So this one female has probably laid 600 eggs, 500 to 600 or more eggs on this one beach in Colombia. How amazing is this? And she's only one, probably 2 or 3 other of these turtles, we think probably nested because they were in close proximity to beaches before we lost track of their transmitters. The other turtles stayed offshore. They only nest every 2 or 3 years. They only tend to nest, and they build up energy in between. But so encouraging to know that that this one turtle in particular, of all the thousands of turtles that come to Atlantic Canadian waters every year, took the time or took the energy, is making the effort to try and increase the population so impressively. And Mike was so impressed, particularly because he said she wasn't a very big turtle either. He said not the biggest that you guys have got. So.
No, and she traveled, we were saying, about, you can only approximate the distance that she's traveled because we don't have the actual data available to us yet, but about 13,000 kilometers. So 13,000 kilometers from Nova Scotia all the way down to Colombia. And the other thing, just to explain too, just because I forgot to, is to say that leatherbacks, as Sean was saying, nest every 2 to 3 years only. So they're on a nesting cycle. So they'll come back 1 year and then not again for another 2 to 3 years. But their nesting years, so the years that they do nest, they'll nest between sort of 6 and 8 times. So every year, that's why she's coming back so often.
That's right. Yeah. So it's not that unusual that she nests so much. Well, I'm very impressed still.
Yeah, it's
but
very cool.
It's pretty typical, I guess, for female turtles. But 13,000 kilometers on a diet of red jellyfish, carrying 600 or 700 eggs, burying 6 nests. And so cool. It's amazing.
She got fat on jellyfish off our coasts, right? It's the Canadian waters that are the place where they get really, really fat. Turtles in Canada, leatherbacks in Canada, weigh 33% more than the same leatherback on the nesting beach. So they come up to Canada, they get really, really fat. We can see them when we catch them on the boat. You can see them with the big layers of fat around their neck and then their flippers. And then by the time they get to the nesting beaches, they're much skinnier. But the other thing that's neat is this turtle was from Colombia, but Canadian waters host turtles from all kinds of different countries. We're really like the UN of sea turtles. Everybody comes, all turtles from all over the Caribbean come up to Canada to feed. So we're a really important place for these animals, which is really exciting because, as Sean was saying at the beginning, 15 years ago, people didn't think those turtles came here very often. So it's been really, really neat.
Yeah, and the thing that just amazes me is that leatherback turtles, now that we know that there are thousands of leatherback turtles that come and feed off of Atlantic Canada every year, these are a part of our wildlife heritage. But what's more impressive is that this isn't just an animal that lives in Canada. It travels 13,000 kilometers south and lays its eggs, its babies, come from a beach in Colombia. So now that beach in Colombia, as well as all of these other ones in Trinidad and Costa Rica or anywhere else, these are all beaches that are important to Canadian wildlife. We are not alone in the world in the need to protect and conserve marine wildlife. And this is a great example of how this project tries to show that connection between our wildlife and other parts of the world, and between marine wildlife and the issues that these animals are facing in trying to survive and maintain their populations. It's been absolutely wonderful. So here is, I hope you can make this out, it's a bit bright. This is our email addresses. If anybody has any questions, we could go on continuing talking about turtles, I think, for another half hour at least, but I don't want to keep anybody any longer than we have to. We will try to take any questions if anybody has any questions or would like to ask any. And what I'm going to do is just enable your microphones so that you can either speak up and ask a question, or you can type a question in. And while you're figuring out if you're going to do that, I see Mr. Dobby asked a question. When you recapture the leatherbacks, do you inspect them for evidence of damage from human pollutants?
We can do that. That's a really good question. And we can do that usually only if the turtle is dead. So if the turtles die, when we find turtles, we'll find them on the beach washed up every year. We'll get a couple of dead leatherbacks. And then we're always very sad to find the dead animal. But then the good thing that comes out of that is we're able to work with the University of Prince Edward Island Veterinary College, and we take the animals there, and they do what's called a necropsy, which is like an autopsy, where they take the turtle apart and try and understand what's caused its death. And we can then assess what's going on there. We haven't found, for example, plastics in a lot of the leatherbacks that we've seen in Nova Scotia, although certainly that's an issue for turtles, but we certainly have found it. But sometimes that's what people think would be the main thing that's been an issue for them. But lots of times they die for all kinds of different reasons. And
maybe just on that, just to mention it, these turtles are considered endangered around the world, and the main reason for this is predominantly a loss of nesting habitat, because many of their beaches are lost to development or hunting or other things that happen in the south. But it's not only in the south where they are threatened. Here in Canada, the problems that they run into, Kathleen has just mentioned, they tend to have issues with plastic pollution that causes problems for them. They can get struck by boats because we have a lot of vessels moving around on the ocean, and they tend to get tangled up in ropes that are in the ocean, particularly from commercial fishing operations. So fishermen are becoming more aware of this and have to be able to react to disentangle turtles if they happen to find them. So these are some of the challenges that they're facing. Okay, pardon me. So I see another question from James Crudis. Do you often see these types of turtles around Cole Harbour, Nova Scotia?
Nope, but we do see them off Halifax, which isn't too far from Cole Harbour.
Will they go to Cole Harbour? Will they swim by Cole Harbour?
Possibly.
I don't know.
Waving to Sidney Crosby on the way.
They certainly, as they come up from the south, and I guess this is an amazing thing that's happening right now. All of these turtles that we've tagged, even Red Rocket, who's in Colombia right now, is soon, if not already, going to be heading north and coming back to Canada to start feeding again. So that's very exciting.
And on the turtle race site, the turtle Una, is still transmitting.
Right.
She's heading right back in towards Nova Scotia. So that's an exciting thing to keep your eye on.
Yeah. Janelle has asked why you fish them out of the ocean if you're trying to help them.
We only take them out to do science on them. So the only reason we would ever remove a sea turtle from the ocean would be if we had to, when we do our scientific work with them. So we'll take them out to measure them, we'll take them out to tag them. We put flipper tags on them. One of the classes I know that is listening today actually raised money, donated money to us so we could buy those flipper tags.
Right.
Those flipper tags help us mark those animals so that we know the Canadian turtles, we can tell where the turtles are coming from. So that kind of population assessment is really important for endangered species. So that's why we would take them out of the water, and also to satellite tag them. We do some other work with them as well. We also do work where we don't take them out of the water, where we'll put cameras on their backs, their shells, using suction cup tags, for example, things that will pop off. So we're really careful. And when we handle leatherbacks, we're really sensitive to the issue that you raise. You don't want to take wild animals out of their natural habitats for, carelessly or for any length of time longer than you might need them. We have them on and off our boat as quickly as possible. We've got a great expert team of fishermen and scientists working together, and we make sure those animals are back in the water as soon as possible.
Yeah, very good question.
We're really careful about animal care. It's a huge issue for us. We're take it very seriously.
Sonia Gass asks, do you know of any areas that rescue the eggs and re-release the hatchlings?
That's one of the things that people do in some nesting programs. So some nesting programs will take the eggs will be laid on the beach. They'll take the eggs and they'll move the nest. So they'll keep the nest in a hatchery where they'll keep them safe, for example, from predators or from poachers, and they put them sort of behind locked gates. And then when the turtles hatch, they'll make sure that those animals get out safely to the ocean.
Wonderful. And here's a question fittingly from Jane R. Beek. How can you tell if you've tagged a turtle before if their satellites come off?
Well, because it's a really good question. Jane's class were the people that had raised the money to help us buy these flipper tags. That's why flipper tags are so important. So we put satellite tags on the animal, but we also put flipper tags, which are, you've seen them. It's almost like giving them an earring, except we do it on their flipper. You can see them sometimes on cows. If you look at cows, they'll have them. But it's just got a number on it, and then it has an address that attaches them to our program. It's the CAN tag, CAN for Canada. And so those animals are marked in other ways beside the satellite tag. So even if the satellite tag's gone, those flipper tags are still on the turtle. We put one on each of its back flippers. And then also we use something called a pit, which is it's the same way, it's a microchip. It's the same thing that a vet might use with your cat or your dog to mark it, and we inject it into the shoulder muscle, and then we can read it. We can scan it like a barcode. So there are different ways we can figure out which turtle it is. And every turtle we handle, we check their flipper tags and we check for a pit tag. That's how we know, too, where other turtles have come from. So if we have turtles from Trinidad or Guyana or Suriname, they'll be tagged as well. We can then alert the people that we work with in those countries that one of their turtles has been found in Canada.
And we've, again, Mike and I have talked about how exciting it would be if we were able to find Red Rocket again this year, or any of our turtles. They've all been tagged now with flipper tags and pit tags, so there is a chance we could see them again.
And in 15 years, we've only ever found one of our turtles again once. Once. Yeah. And all of our hours of work on the sea. So a
needle in a haystack, or a turtle in the ocean. And another question here, have you folks ever seen the turtles lay the eggs?
I have, yeah. I was really lucky. I was able to I've seen them lay eggs in Trinidad, on Matura Beach in Trinidad, and I've seen them lay eggs in Florida on Juno Beach. So one of the easiest places to get to for looking at sea turtles is Florida if you want to see them lay their eggs. It's the easiest place for Canadians to get to, usually. But, I mean, they lay them all throughout the Caribbean, too, so it's really neat. It takes 2 hours, about 2 hours. So the females come up on the beach, and they have to carve out. They move slowly on land, right? They don't have legs to carry them, so they're using their flippers to move themselves very slowly up the nesting beach. And they carve out a big nest for the turtles, a little nest chamber for the turtles, and they lay the eggs, and they pat the sand down, and they do this they move around trying to sort of disguise the nest, and then they head back into the ocean. It's fascinating. It's 2 hours, but it passes in a second. It's amazing to see.
I've not seen leatherback turtles nesting, but I've seen green sea turtles and other sea turtles nesting. I'd like to see leatherbacks because they are the most enormous, like 2, 3, 5, 600 kilos of turtle trying to dig a hole and lay an egg. So.
It's amazing. It's like, I remember the first time I saw it, I really felt like I was watching a dinosaur. It was so interesting because it was like a full moon and there's this rough surf, and all of a sudden there's this big hulking massive turtle on the ground, and it just slowly moves up the ocean, and I thought, this has been happening for millions of years. I really felt so connected to that. It was amazing.
Just one thing I'll mention on that, of course, is it's the type of thing that you do want to be careful. I mean, you don't want to go out and look for turtles nesting on your own. Generally, you want to go with a group that knows what they're doing and is being careful. The turtles can be disturbed if they come up to nest and there are people or dogs or things that are bothering them around, they'll leave. And of course, you don't want that at all. So you only ever do this in controlled situations with people that know what they're doing and very cautious so that you make sure that you're not disturbing the turtles as they're nesting. So, well, listen, this is great, and we could, in all seriousness, go on and continue talking about leatherback turtles for much more time. But I think maybe what we should do now is say thanks for everybody for coming in and listening to us talk about leatherback turtles. We've really only touched the surface of what there is to learn about these creatures, and we've really only touched the surface about what there is to talk about in terms of marine animals in general that live in Canada. We really appreciate everybody coming and giving us your time to come and indulge us as we get to show you pretty pictures and talk about leatherback turtles. Our email addresses are on the screen there. Thank you for all of your questions. If any of you have any other questions, please feel free to email us or both of us, and we'll try and get back to you. And go to the website turtlerace.ca, and you'll see links both to leatherback turtle information, Canadian Wildlife Federation, and the Canadian Sea Turtle Network, and there's lots more that you can find out. So thank you very much, everybody. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you.